G'day and welcome to MGUY News for Friday the 10th of May 2024. This is a new series of videos in which I just condense a bunch of stories into very short digestible form and put links in the description so you can read them at your leisure later. So we're kicking off with this rather terrifying one in the fanboy website The Driven. EV crash victims could be left to die in battery fires without training for responders, inquiry told. Challenges involved in saving passengers from electric car crashes could see victims dragged from vehicles by firefighters or, in the most extreme cases, left to die, an inquiry has been told. The New South Wales Government's Electric and Hybrid Vehicle Batteries Inquiry heard testimony from fire and rescue services, paramedics, the Motor Traders Association and TAFE on Tuesday in its second public hearing. The inquiry heard Australia's first responders, mechanics and tow truck drivers did not have adequate training to deal with electric vehicle collisions, and gaps in their knowledge had the potential to put lives at risk. In the most serious incidents, firefighters said crews could be forced to abandon rescues or crudely rescue passengers from vehicles and were being left flying blind at battery fires. Well, this is one of the big problems with EVs when they get into accidents, because even the slightest bit of damage to the battery can cause it to go into thermal runaway, it can explode, it can send out jets of flame. No wonder the first responders don't want to have anything to do with them. Much harder to put out than regular internal combustion engine cars, and the first responders are the ones that are going to suffer. Okay, a couple of good articles from the UK Daily Telegraph. This one in particular, a pragmatic rethink of Britain's electric vehicle switch is desperately needed. The notion of a quick transition away from petrol was always balmy, but we have options. Yes, it was always balmy. The electric car is not popular today. The early adopters have all bought theirs, so now the car giants are having to persuade normal punters of the merits of going electric, and they are having none of it. There is a rather fundamental drawback with an electric car. It simply doesn't do what you want a car to do. It doesn't get you from A to B reliably if you are going on a long journey, and you have no idea whether you will be able to fill it up. Put it together and it's referred to as range anxiety, and it's very real. Electric is fine and dandy for the short local journey, but should you decide to head off for the hills, forget it. And hence demand has dried up. Tesla is making 14,000 workers redundant. In March, German sales of electric cars collapsed by 30%. You can't give a second-hand electric car away in the UK. Politicians have been dreaming of vote-winning green agendas and utopian engineering and energy switches. Dreams, of course, don't need to be real. They don't need to accommodate the needs of the consumer, the practicalities of installing colossal new infrastructure, and the small matter of where all this electricity is coming from. Coal? Flipping transportation from fossil fuels directly to electric is not like flipping a light switch. The very notion is balmy, which is why the USA predicts electric car take-up by 2050 in the USA will only be 20%. In Europe, our idealists are heading towards 100%. And this is the second article from the Telegraph, and this is really interesting because it shows how Ford is planning on dealing with the EV mandates already in place essentially in the UK. I think most manufacturers have to produce 20% electric cars or some percentage this year, and they're fined if they don't reach that target. As we'll see, the electric car carnage has only just begun. Ford has just confirmed what has long been feared, that the latest quotas are punitive for UK consumers and a gift to China. As with so much of the legislation passed during the last 5 years, setting a quota for the percentage of EVs companies had to sell probably seemed like a good idea at the time. Manufacturers now have to ensure that 22% of the cars they shift off the forecourt are battery powered, rising steadily to 80% by the end of this decade and 100% by 2035. If they don't hit their quota, the senior executives will get 10 years hard labour in Siberia. Well, actually it's a fine of up to £15,000 per vehicle, but it nonetheless feels extremely draconian. Like Soviet planners in the 1950s, the architects of this legislation presumably assumed that all you had to do was set a target and everything would fall into place. Yet the masterminds foisting this legislation on businesses don't appear to have given much thought to what will happen if the quota isn't met. Now Ford, one of the biggest auto giants in the world and still a major manufacturer in Europe, has provided an answer. We can't push EVs into the market against demand, said Martin Sander, the general manager of Ford Model E Europe, at a conference this week. We're not going to pay penalties. The only alternative is to take our shipments of engine vehicles to the UK down and sell these vehicles somewhere else. In effect, Ford will limit its sales of cars in the UK. If you had your eye on a new model, forget it. You'll have to put your name on a waiting list, just as East Germans had to wait years for a Trabant. Heck, we may even see a black market in off-the-books transit vans. Ford is the first to spell it out in public, but we can be confident all the other manufacturers are thinking the same thing. They can't absorb huge fines. The only alternative is to limit the sale of petrol cars. This story reminds me of the Black Knight sketch in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Tis but a scratch, 'tis but a flesh wound. The EV red ink keeps coming. As companies lose money, Biden keeps rolling out the subsidies. Bad news from electric vehicle manufacturers is coming almost as frequently as the bullish White House press releases. Even as manufacturers rack up big losses, the administration continues to push out subsidies for a force-fed EV transition. EV manufacturer Lucid this week reported that it lost $684.8 million in the first quarter of the year. That's $348,000 per car delivered. The good news was that it still aims to produce 9,000 vehicles this year. Toyota tells 3 times as many cars in a day. Lucid was at least able to raise another $1 billion in capital from its majority shareholder, Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. You have to smile at the irony that oil profits are financing an American EV manufacturer. Oh yes you do. EV startup Rivian this week also reported $1.45 billion in losses during the first 3 months of the year, amounting to $106,000 for each of the 13,588 vehicles it delivered. Its stock has fallen about 92% since the company went public in autumn 2021, amid irrational investor exuberance. Yeah, irrational is the word. Lucid stock is down 95% from its peak in November 2021. Welcome to the real world of EVs. This story is interesting because a lot of the early Teslas from 2012, 2013 are coming to essentially what's the end of their life, and they're disposable. There's nothing they can do because a new battery costs more than the car's worth. Mayhem at EV repair shop as more early adopters experience battery death. More early model EV batteries are dying, and those needing replacements are getting sticker shock and choosing instead to scrap their cars altogether. Seattle, more commonly than ever before, batteries in early model electric vehicles are dying, and as a result, EV experts said drivers needing replacements are getting sticker shock. Carl Medlock, owner of Medlock & Sons on Delridge Way in Seattle, said one early EV adopter he knows, a Washington woman, was visiting her daughter in Oregon when the car's battery died completely. The car shut off in her daughter's driveway, said Medlock. She was going to get the $17,000 repair. The car books out at $20,000 and she just didn't feel like it was worth it. So they walked away from it. That is not an unusual price for a replacement battery. According to Medlock, Tesla battery new is between $12,000 to $20,000 depending on how big the pack is. Medlock bought her old car from her for about $2,500. He said his hope is to repair the battery and sell it and give it a new life. He has done this for several others, he said, but it's almost becoming overwhelming. It's kind of morphed into 57 of them sitting here, said Medlock, of the scrapped cars. He said that his shop also repairs the batteries themselves, usually for about $5,000 to $7,000. Now, with so many people needing battery repairs or replacements, he said his shop is inundated with appointments. It's mayhem, said Medlock. And it's only going to get worse. I mean, Tesla's done quite well. If you get 10 years out of a battery, that's good. But even still, at the end of 10 years, you've got to pony up $20,000 for a new battery, which is just not going to be worth it. Another legacy automaker that's backing away from its wild electrification promises is Mercedes-Benz. Mercedes-Benz backs away from electric vehicles amid weak sales. German luxury automaker Mercedes-Benz is backing away from its commitment to fully transition to electric vehicles, EVs, by 2030 amid weak sales, shifting back to gas-powered cars that remain in demand among car buyers. According to Bloomberg UK, Mercedes-Benz CEO Ola Källenius told shareholders on Wednesday that the automaker's transformation to EVs might take longer than expected. Kalenius had sought to make Mercedes-Benz fully electric by 2030. Madness. In July 2021, Mercedes-Benz announced its all-electric push, vowing to shift from an electric-first to an electric-only agenda. The EV shift is picking up speed, especially in the luxury segment where Mercedes-Benz belongs, Kalenius said in 2021. So across the ditch in New Zealand, they're actually struggling to generate enough electricity to keep the lights on. They're having to burn this thing called coal? Genesis Energy to fire up coal imports, citing increased demand, dwindling gas supply. Genesis Energy is to resume importing coal, as reduced gas supplies and increased demand add to the problem of keeping the lights on in future years. Minister for Resources Shane Jones was welcoming the move, with investment in New Zealand coalfields still stymied by the 2018 exploration ban, saying Genesis should be on the honours list. The company said it currently had about 500,000 tonnes at its Huntly power station, which it expected to be well through after this winter, but would then replenish to maintain a stockpile of 350,000 tonnes, enough to meet its own needs. Chief Executive Malcolm Johns said coal use was necessary as gas supplies were down a third on a year ago, hydro lake inflows were 13% lower, and solar and wind power were intermittent. Wow, are they just working this out? Back to Australia, and our National Roads and Motorists Association, which is as woke as they come, has found out that one of its EV charging equipment suppliers has just gone bust. NRMA dumps new battery-backed EV charging stations as another big provider hits the wall. The shakeout in the EV fast-charging industry continues apace, with another major charging equipment provider, the US-based Freewire, reportedly hitting the wall just weeks after the financial collapse of Australia-based Tritium. News of Freewire's problems came as the NRMA confirmed that it is removing the battery-backed EV fast chargers provided by Freewire and installed just a few months ago. What a great use of money. It will not be using the Freewire technology at any other sites on its national network. Freewire had developed an innovative system that uses inbuilt battery storage to allow its charging equipment to operate at full capacity and not be constrained by local network limits. I wonder how long that would last for if somebody plugs in with a 350 kilowatt charge demand. How big are these batteries? Ridiculous. But this week it reportedly announced plans to close its headquarters and lay off all its employees. Excellent. And finally, this is another story from Australia where unintended consequences of electrification come home to roost, because nobody can hear the damn things coming. So whenever you drive your EV, it'll sound like a grocery delivery truck in reverse. Dangerously quiet EVs will be forced to emit noise at low speeds under new Australian law. One of the most unique aspects of driving an electric vehicle will soon change in a major way for Aussie motorists. For many motorists, one of the most striking features of driving an electric car for the first time is the uncanny silence. But while a reduction in road noise may be a positive, advocates for the blind and low vision community have long warned of the danger these heavy, silent cars pose to pedestrians. After years of lobbying for the introduction of mandatory warning sounds, their efforts have paid off, with the Albanese government announcing a new design rule to make quiet cars, trucks and buses travelling at low speeds safer for pedestrians. From November 2025, new electric, hybrid and hydrogen fuel cell cars, trucks and buses must be fitted with an acoustic vehicle alerting system, AVAS. A safety alert or sound that is emitted when the vehicle is travelling at low speeds in car parks, intersections and driveways. So that will add to the pleasure of driving an EV, no doubt. So that's it for this one. All the links are in the description. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.